All right, welcome, Don Brown. First episode of Just in Time. This is a new series where we're trying to bring just a little bit of information just in time for people to employ, deploy into their work, into their life. Um, there's all types of content out in the world, and it comes across our way in different ways and forms. And sometimes we're ready to receive it, sometimes we're not. So my hope is that they are just in time to receive this information. So thank you for coming and joining me on this platform today. We're hoping to do some cool stuff. You've been doing some really cool stuff in terms of the Lighting Matters universe and trying to promote the benefits and value of light in the built environment. Now, for those who are not familiar with you and your phenomenal work, I can say I know Don. We met mainly through IES Toronto section. We've worked together there, but this is your second year as president in the IES Waterloo section, which is in Southwest Ontario, for those who don't know Canadian geography. And you are also the proud owner-operator of OALD, Ontario Aesthetic Lighting Design.
Yes, that's correct.
So let's go back a little bit further. How did you end up where you are? Like, what was your journey through lighting?
Oh, wow. Yes. I actually started in the lighting industry about 25 years ago.
When you were
I
10?
work I worked for a small engineering firm in Hamilton, Ontario, for quite some time called Group 8 Engineering. They were bought out by a larger company called Tro Global. Tro rebranded into EXP, and they acquired a large firm in the States called Accent, and that company had a dedicated lighting division. So I spent probably about 10 or 11 years working directly under an electrical engineer. And then I went and worked for a fairly well-known lighting designer. His name's Aram Eben. He's amazing.
Love him.
And I was with that group for about 8 years. And then it got to the point, once I got to like 20 years with DXP, 20 years in the industry, I was like, you know what? I want to figure out, like, I want to know how other people do our same thing. So I went to go work for another firm in Hamilton that they're just amazing people, Walter Fady. And I was with Walter Fady for a couple of years. And then um, I quickly realized that they were kind of focused on four main sectors, and that the projects that I really enjoyed working on the most, like long-term care, weren't necessarily the projects that they were going to be bringing in
Mm,
on a regular basis. And
right.
so I thought, you know what, I have all of these skills and everything, and so I would be more accessible to different people in different categories if I were to go on my own. And it was really scary. But I had some amazing support from Aram, of course, and my good friend Deborah Gottesman. And, that is like, it's so valuable, because a lot of times I think like our fear overwhelms us, and just to have people that are like, you can do this, like, we have
Right.
faith in you, like, you're gonna be okay,
Mhm.
is like amazing. So now it's been a couple of years with OALD, and things are really like awesome and fun, and I'm the happiest I've ever been.
Yeah, I mean, you
So
look it, you sound it.
thanks.
So tell me a little bit about the transition. So you were in electrical engineering, and then Aram Sweet talked to you with his wily
Oh
ways and
no.
brought you over.
No, no. So I was all like, I graduated from architectural technology program,
Hmm.
and then I worked for the electrical department of the engineering firm, doing mostly lighting, because when I originally got hired, I made sure that it was very clear that I am an artist.
Okay.
And so I didn't want to be only doing like electrical systems, and I really didn't understand electrical systems all that well, even though I took courses and like I just had this mental block with it, you know?
Right.
And so after a little bit of time passed, my employers came to me with the ED 100 course and suggested I take it. I took it, I loved it. And it just so happened the instructor of that course, Jerry Cornwall, was the program director at Ryerson, which is now Toronto Metropolitan University. Took the certificate course, got my LC, blah, blah, blah. And so just kind of worked my way up from there. And then when EXP grew and brought on Xenth and merged with that whole group, I was introduced to Aram. I was actually going to get laid off. We were going through a little bit of the company was going through a little bit of a slow period,
Okay.
and it was just after the 2008 thing and all of
Mm.
that. So a couple few years after that, and then so anyways, he kind of saved me because he was working on this massive park in Doha, Qatar, and needed somebody to help out. So I'm like, sure, like I would love to come join your group, and it was just like such a great opportunity because they have people who do work in theatrical from the theatrical standpoint, and then they had some people who were very well versed in the hospitality sector. And so I joined this group and I'm like, am I even like a real lighting designer? Like am I even able to like measure up with but for sure it all worked out and everything. I learned like so much from all of them, and yeah, that's how that kind of transition went out because it was just really like, I don't know, like divine intervention sort of thing. It was,
Right.
yeah, it was just luck, I guess.
So now let's fast forward. We're in
Mhm.
modern day. You're, like we said, you're president of IES chapter for your second year. You've got your own business that you're running and growing, and yet you're also still advocating out there for the practice of lighting design. So, what is it about, like, what are you not seeing currently in our world that made you say, I need to speak up more about this, that I need to engage in this conversation?
There's been a few experiences that I've had since being on my own that have been real eye openers. Um, One of the first non-residential projects that I uh, had the opportunity to get onto, I was asked to pretty much take all my work and give it over to the electrical engineer so that they could put it in their drawings. And I was like, I don't, that doesn't seem right. And I was assured that this is like a standard thing that happens in the industry and everybody does it. And I'm just going to have to accept it. And I'm like, no, nah, I'm not doing that anymore. That will be the last project that I ever do that on. And then, so that was one thing that I thought, okay, why is that? Like, why is that acceptable to our industry? And it got me thinking about, well, maybe it's just because as a discipline,
Mm-hmm.
lighting is not valued in the same way that architecture or interiors is valued. And so that sort of kind of got me thinking, like, why is that? Then the second experience was a larger project in my hometown of Brantford. I did it's a sports entertainment center, and I did everything I could possibly do in order to get onto this job. Like I wrote to my counselors to ask them to, you know, how do I like get onto this project? How do I get a name in here? Because I'm not like it's unlikely that I'm going to get brought in by the electrical engineer. I would have to be requested by the city. Like the city would
Mm.
have to put it into the RFP that a lighting designer, they want a lighting designer on the job. And so I talked to as many people as I could. I talked to every single proponent. I registered as a proponent. I talked to all of the contractors who, signed up to or registered. I had great conversations and everything with all of them. The contract got awarded. Long story short, there was no budget for lighting design, which
Mm.
there was a budget for lighting design. If you read the RFP, it's just that they didn't want to make room in the budget for a lighting designer. And so that really opened my eyes to the fact that, okay, so people don't even know that they need to ask for a lighting designer and that they're not going to get it. People are not just going to be out of like the goodness of their heart welcoming a lighting designer onto the job. And I really honestly believe that that's what municipalities think happens. Like,
So
so
so let's talk. Hold on. Let's back up.
yeah.
I want to. There's a few things in there that I like to unpack. So going back to the drawing set aspect of you giving over your work so that it goes onto the engineering set. Let's just talk real quick. Why does that matter?
Oh, because they can make changes to things because it's their stamp going on it, and they don't have to consult me. And so it could be a tiny little thing. Like, here's an example. Um, I had specified a specific control system from a specific manufacturer to be the basis of design with another manufacturer as the alternate. And the reason I did that is because the basis of design manufacturer offered the information for the color temperature of the keypads that we were going to
Mm,
use. And the other manufacturer didn't have that information. I knew that they had backlit keypads, but I didn't know what the color temperature range was going to be. And the keypad was going to go into the bedroom while somebody was sleeping, and I didn't feel confident enough to name them as the first name.
okay.
But
And I
when
want
the
to clarify
project,
for
when
those
my
who are for anyone who's listening to this that doesn't quite understand the value of that, as I'm understanding it, when someone's asleep, there's a keypad on the wall and it's glowing. If it's a certain color temp, something in a bluer, that's going to be a little more stark in that dark environment. Whereas if you had something on a warmer scale, it's a little softer, a little easier to transition between dead asleep to waking up and having that be on the wall. Am I on the right track with it?
yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
All right. Keep
So
going.
it's like having that alarm clock with the green lights or the green letters on it. It's a little bit, too harsh for you.
Sure.
So, um, anyways, when my information got inserted into their drawings, they already had details and everything set up for my alternate manufacturer. So they put it in as my alternate manufacturer being the
The lead.
first, the lead. And I was like, this is just, it's in the grand scheme of things, it's a small thing. And I don't really want to, like, make a big deal over it or anything. And I get that everybody on the job is trying to do this as efficiently as they can. And so if they have already the details, I can understand why they would do it, but it's not necessarily what's in the best interest of the client.
Sure.
So, and the client has no clue. Like, they don't know. They're relying on us to tell them. So that is why that kind of was important to me and why it stood out for me.
Okay. And I think what you kind of hinted at or talked about was licensure, right? Or approval, like the stamp. It is the
Yeah,
engineer's stamp on the drawing. Lighting designers can't stamp drawings. They're not,
right.
I guess, on the hook for the design in the same way. Or tell me about that. Like, what is
So
where does
lighting
liability
designers
lie?
do not have legal representation anywhere in the entire world. So there are countries that have legislation that they try to uphold certain design standards, but nowhere in the world is there legislation that says in order to call yourself a lighting designer, you have to, meet certain criteria or
Right.
whatever. So the and so the electrical engineer kind of they are the person who is traditionally responsible for the lighting package and they
Mm,
stamp it. And if you it depends on who the engineer is, what their philosophies are, and really how easy or difficult it's going to be in order to accomplish what you need to accomplish as from a lighting design perspective. Whether you work directly with an electrical engineer, whether you work in partnership with an electrical engineer, that relationship and that dynamic is always going to be governed by them because they have the final say.
Right.
Um, so if you are long-term care, for example, if you're trying to design in a way that not only meets the illuminance targets or the ministry guidelines, but also in addition caters to all of the needs for the senior environment and the aging eye and all of that stuff. Um, if the electrical engineer is of the position that all we want to do on this job is just meet code and then we want to move on,
Right.
then they're going to be a little bit resistant to having to do a little bit more extra work in order to do, I guess, I would consider to be the right thing, right?
Sure.
So
So let me ask another question
that's
then.
that's where the drive is for Lighting Matters. And Lighting Matters really is a call to lighting designers and to our industry to start talking to people outside of our industry about what we bring to the table, the value that we can bring to them, so that it raises their expectation, right? So if they understand, first of all, that we exist,
Mm-hmm.
and second of all, understand that they have options and a choice, I feel like it will make our position more valuable to them, and will be considered as a specialty in RFPs more often, or will be approached more often, and our work will be valued a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that people are just going to want to blow their money and whatever, and we're not going to be responsible. But I think that if we can kind of get them to understand that if you pay attention to lighting, that can give you benefits not only in terms of health and wellness, but in terms of finances. Could bring in extra revenue, drive customers into your establishment, increase productivity, fewer mistakes, that sort of thing. Or even in healthcare situation, maybe it helps people to recover a little bit faster, so you have a little bit more turnover and you don't have a 13-hour waiting period for your emergency department.
Right.
But so that's kind of in a nutshell what is driving my passion for Lighting Matters.
Fantastic. And I think that fits really well with what we're trying to do here, what I'm trying to do here on this platform. I think if we can raise the base level of what we're willing to accept in terms of lighting and lighting design, like there is this base level that we accept now that's pretty trash in my
Mm-hmm.
humble opinion. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of places you can walk into, restaurants, retail, office spaces that it feels horrible. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but for someone, it was good enough, and for whatever reason, it was good enough. To me, my goal is, can we just raise that threshold of what we're willing to say is good enough? Like, what's the bare minimum we're willing to accept? Because then I think it pushes everything that little bit higher in terms of that acceptability. So
Mm-hmm.
let's chat for a second from your perspective. If I'm not hiring a dedicated lighting designer to focus and really manage the space from a visual aspect, right? I mean, the finishes, the carpet, the drapes, the tile, all of that other stuff we've spent money on means absolutely nothing if I can't see it, right? And I think that is managing both natural daylight as it comes into a space and balancing that with the electric light that we're putting into the space. So if you're not doing it, if a lighting designer is not being hired and budgeted for this project, who's doing it? Because there are options, right? They do have a few different categories. And I think the main concept here is, what are they giving up? what is that value add and difference between having a dedicated lighting designer versus maybe having a rep agency do it versus having your engineer take full responsibility of it? From your mind, what do you feel are the like goods and bads of each of those verticals?
Yeah. So, first, I'd like to address this from the perspective of the person managing the project or the owner.
Okay.
What the tragic thing is that they don't even know to question it. They don't even
Sure.
know to ask. So they think, and maybe in their mind, and a lot of these people that we are working with, this is the biggest thing that they will do in their entire life. They've never done a big, huge project, a lot of them before, and a lot of them are using their entire life savings in order to accomplish this thing that they want to do. So they have this vision in their mind of what it is that they think that they're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And they just trust that the team, according to the government that is, mandated by the government, is going to help them get there.
Sure.
And so what they gain by having a lighting consultant on the project, is somebody who is, let me back up. So when you have a consultant team, typically the electrical engineer, their mindset is to think about how are we going to accomplish this? And how are we going to do it in the most efficient way possible? And energy efficiency. And all we need to do is just, we can see. So as long as somebody can see, then we're good. We meet code. We're like, and as long as we have less energy and we do it, higher lumens per watt, that is the driver of a good design. But then if you
Well,
take the
hold on.
perspective,
To piggyback
sorry,
on that, right? To piggyback on
yeah,
that, the electrical design team, lighting is only a small portion of that overall electrical plan, right? Because they
yeah,
have to worry about the plan for every load type that's going into the building: refrigeration, for HVAC, for your standard plug outlets, safety, fire. Like it's a very broad scale, and emotional impact of a space doesn't really fit in in those
in their
considerations,
mind.
right?
Like, their brain just doesn't think in that way. So that's why we have architects and interior designers. But architects and interior designers are more concerned with the what. They answer the what of the situation or the problem. And so they're concerned with, what does the fixture look like? How big is it? What proportion is it in relationship to the rest of the things going on? And what's the character of it? How does it look? How does it match up? And then for an architect, they're thinking about the light that's coming in from outside. Like when they're talking about light, when an architect talks about light, they're talking about light, that daylight usually
Mm.
that's coming in. That's what their concern is. And they understand that they need lights and everything, but they are really, their brain just gravitates and focuses on scale, proportion, volume, balance, that sort of thing. The lighting designer is the one person that marries the two and asks why. Why are we doing this? Who is in the room? Like, why do we need so much light? Oh, well, we're designing for seniors. Or why are we lighting this restaurant? Is the restaurant McDonald, like a fast food chain, and we want it to kind of have a more of a casual or a economy type feel to it? Or are we doing some five-star, restaurant in downtown Toronto where we want this whole experience and memories and all of this? And so a lighting designer is going to take the technical aspects that the engineer focuses on and the design aspects or the human aspects and marry them together and understand, if I put light here, then it's going to have this impact on the person or the people that are going to be in the space. So,
Mm-hmm.
and if I arrange it in a certain way, then that is going to be perceived as being more beautiful or more comfortable or more in line. And it's not just subjective. There's science and psychology behind all of these things that we know if we balance our luminance ratios in a certain way and apply the light in a certain way, the majority of the people who enter that space are going to feel comfortable, or it's going to make sense. Like
Right.
it's going to make sense with what the architect's doing and what their or the interior designer is doing or whatever. So that is the value. And because everything makes sense when you go into the room and it feels good, um, there's a whole slew of benefits to it, like your health and well-being, your productivity, like I was saying, your perception of that establishment. Like, for example, if you are going to a job interview, let's say, you're going to make sure that you have your best clothing on, you have your hair done, your teeth are brushed, you smell good, all of that stuff. Why? Because that is going to leave an impression on the people who you want to like you and to hire you. Well, same sort of thing in business. People, business owners, no matter who you are, what industry you're in, you want your customers to like you.
Yeah.
And so if you want your customers to like you, you want to appeal to whatever it is that, makes them attracted to you. And usually beauty in whatever form or whatever way is the thing that kind of draws the emotional connection in
Hmm.
and really like elevates your perception of a space or a company or the service that you're going to get or whatever. So that's the driving force for lighting design.
That's great. I love the way you broke those elements down. Now, we're making some generalities here, right? Like we're putting some harsh comments a little bit on the way an engineer thinks or the way an architect thinks, but they're general. They go into that career, they go through that training because of a certain mindset. Lighting designers, just like any other profession, it's not necessarily created equal. We have people who come into lighting design through a theatrical aspect, like myself,
Mm-hmm.
or people who maybe came in through an electrical design aspect, like yourself. There's also people who came from architecture or interiors and some way, form, or another came into this space. What I do find is unique about lighting as a profession and as a uh, what's the term I'm looking for?
Service?
As a service, as a study, as a an art
Discipline?
form.
Yeah. Art form? Yeah.
Yeah, what I would
Volume?
say differentiates lighting design as an art form is it does take a balance between left brain and right brain sensibilities because there is the technical aspect more and more so every year that side becomes starts to grow with controls and integrating various technologies. Like light is doing way more nowadays than just illumination. But then there is the beauty aspect of light and balance and proportions, visual balance and proportions, which is so much more difficult to quantify than like the size of a table as it relates to the size of a room or the size of a couch within a space. Like
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
the same concept. That interiors person is still understanding and playing with the proportions of the space to make sure it feels good to interact with it so that you flow through it in a certain way. And the
Mm-hmm.
lighting designer adds that other layer of visually capturing those physical pieces. It's what enhances that architecture, right? I mean,
Yep.
without it, we'd have nothing left. Okay, so two things. You want to talk about licensure, and I want to just really quickly hear you talk about like when the responsibility of assigning lighting gets pushed to the electrical engineer. I think we kind of talked about that a little bit. They don't have that design aesthetic, but what about let's talk about the rep
Mm-hmm.
agent.
Yeah.
So when someone has a relationship with their rep agent, agents are people who represent manufacturers in different territories and have lots of different line cards at their disposal, but they do have a set line card. They are
Mhm.
limited in terms of the scope of product that they can provide. And also, those rep agents come from different backgrounds, right? So they're not all bringing the same amount of lighting knowledge and lighting support to the table. They've got teams behind them, they've got things, but from your perspective as a designer, what's that trade off look like from a project standpoint
This
between?
is like a really juicy question. Okay, so it depends.
Sure.
So, what it depends on is the qualifications of that sales agent. So, if it's a sales agent who has got the design knowledge and background and
Many of them do,
has
right? Many of
taken
them do.
all of the courses and they've got their credentials and they actually understand lighting design and practice it and are good at it or have practiced it in the past before becoming involved with an agency, as long as they are transparent and say to the client or the person who's building this space that I'm making commission off of the sale of the fixtures, and so I'm obligated to like show you the products that I represent, and we will only be picking from this pool of fixtures. As long as the person who is paying for the design is aware of that, okay. However, and here's the catch, and here's what I think a lot of lighting designers really struggle with, is that from our perspective and traditionally, the lighting designer needs to be focused on what's in the best interest of the client. And
Sure.
so it's really difficult. And I know that there are some very well-intended people serving design from the sales perspective, but it is very difficult to make sure and remain impartial when you're collecting a fee off of the product. It's very difficult. And so I think that um, that needs to be kind of, that conversation kind of has to happen. But the people in the general public need to understand that they do have the option. They don't have to go with the sales agent or the showroom. And a lot of people think that the showroom or the sales agent is the designer and that there's no other option out there. And I think that the reason why that is because as an industry, we don't showcase ourselves and showcase our talents enough to or speak to those people out there. We speak to each other a lot, and there are
Ad
some
nauseum.
people I follow on LinkedIn and social media that do amazing stuff, but there always seems to be, they're giving tips, lighting tips to other lighting designers almost, and it's like, no, talk about like, talk to the owner or talk to that restaurant, or
Right.
how about let's give design awards or let's give project awards to people who paid for the project opposed
Mm.
to the lighting designer, because, well, in conjunction with the lighting designer, I suppose, because they earned it, of course, but um that person, the whole point of the lighting design field is to elevate the human experience. So, like, if the people who were building the buildings, and I'm really thinking of people who work for government agencies mostly, because if
Mm.
you are a high-end, you know, retail or hospitality person, you know that you need a lighting consultant. Like, these are things that these types of people, they already kind of know. But if you're just working for the procurement department of a municipality, you don't know. So if we were to make it more well understood that there are different categories and that showrooms don't aren't designers. Like, for example, there's a designer in my hometown that is, whatever showroom and design. Like, they have design right in their name, but
Hmm.
they're not offering design services. Like, and if they are, it's not to the extent that like an architectural lighting designer would offer. So people don't really know unless we all who offer that higher quality of lighting design have some sort of distinguishable feature. And what is that distinguishable feature? It's the CLD credential. And a lot of people think that, oh, well, you have to be an IALD member or an
Mm.
IALD professional in order to get that CLD. No, you don't. An engineer can get a CLD.
Okay.
Like, anybody can get a CLD.
So what are the
So,
requirements?
so what are the requirements is that you have to have led lighting projects for a certain amount of time. I think it's 3 years. And then you have to demonstrate competency under 7 domains of practice. And so it's possible for somebody who is, within the engineering capacity or within the interior design capacity. Like, how many like lighting designers are there operating out of interior design? Like, probably a lot.
Yeah.
So um, all you have to do is show that you can conduct yourself and manage a project in a professional way, and that you understand those 7 domains of practice, which I'm not going to, I don't remember right off the top of my head,
That's okay.
but
We'll include a link to the.
yeah, I include a link to the CLD website. So, but as long as you are um, meeting that certain baseline criteria in terms of managing a project and considering all aspects of design, then you can get your CLD, right? So, and you don't have to give up your interior design in order to get it or whatever. But
And
that
and who's
CLD
who's
is
judging
a,
that? Like who's evaluating when you submit and you give all
oh,
this
okay.
criteria? Who's evaluating that?
So the CLD Commission is a third-party commissioning agency that was kind of initiated by the IALD, and so IALD members kind of like they're working in partnership somewhat, but they are a separate entity, a separate review body than the IALD.
But it's
So
more of a
it's
peer
the
review,
people
right?
who review it are volunteers. Like, I volunteer to
Hmm.
review CLD submissions. And I'm sure other CLDs are called upon to review submissions.
Right.
So yeah,
How does that
it's
differ?
evaluated by your peers to answer the question. Yeah.
Right. And so how does that differ from having just an LC?
Okay, so LC is a minimum benchmark in terms of lighting knowledge. And so the LC is intended to be somewhat of a safeguard for consumers, but you can be a manufacturer, you can be an agent, you can be it spans across a lot of different disciplines. So there's no guarantee that if you are working with a LC that they are practicing design on a continuous basis. And the same is true if you are working if you put out an RFP and you get a submission back from somebody who is an IALD, a professional IALD, doesn't necessarily mean that that person is still practicing, because you could be retired and still hold your IALD
Mm.
professional designation. So only if you have a CLD are you required to maintain your learning credits
Yeah.
and be practicing.
An active
So
portfolio.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And so
So LC really just means I have learned a base level of information, whether it's technical, design, application. Like I have an understanding of light and how it works in the built environment. The CLD says not only do I have this base understanding of light in the built environment, I've actually applied that knowledge in real practice on actual jobs and have done so consistently over, you said, I think like maybe minimum 3 years.
3 years. Yeah.
I think most people would agree that there is a substantial difference in the quality of work that you're going to get on those two qualifications. Now, like for myself, do I think someone like me if I had an LC, would that show some level of value? I think so. I think that can be understood, but I think the biggest part of this is making sure the broader public understands the difference between those qualifications. I think it's the same as if you have a friend who's like, "Oh yeah, I'm an interior designer. I'd love to help you, redo your new baby room for your baby." And it's like, well, are they an interior designer or are they a decorator?
A
Are they going
creator
to help
or yeah.
you pick some paint and like organize shelves and place things in a nice way? Maybe even like pick out a few furniture things? Or is it someone who's going to actually understand spatial use and understand your needs in that space, like a true interior designer who understands a building? I mean, I think interior
Mhm.
designers are similar. They sometimes get this lower grade. They're not quite an architect, and yet most of them are architects. They've
Yeah,
just chosen to
to work on the
focus
inside of the building.
on the inside of the shell as opposed to the shell
Yeah,
and the structure
yeah.
itself. Um,
Hmm.
that's great. Don, we're out of time. You've given
Okay.
me some amazing stuff
Thank you
to
so
think
much.
and ponder over. Really
Hmm.
appreciate you pioneering episode 1 of Just in Time with us. And hopefully
So,
this sparks more conversation and gets more people thinking about exactly how light matters.
yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Justin.
It's been a pleasure, Don. We'll talk again soon.